that event was only the first stage in a whole series of experiments that are now underway here in the lab. And not only counting red blood cells, but also oxygenation levels. You can see here, there's a machine that literally measures the oxygenation level of the blood. So we can check for oxygenation both before, like a control test, before we apply music to the blood and after. Now, why are we doing this? Well, because Professor G and I hypothesize that the mechanism that causes the healing in the blood by the music and by intention is actually related to oxygen levels in the blood. So, in your body, you have a heart, a pump, of course, that's pumping the oxygen around, but it's doing two jobs. One is circulating the blood, and the other thing it's doing is it's providing pulses of low frequency energy that's causing the hemoglobin to uptake the dissolved oxygen that's already there in the blood. And in a similar kind of way, what we're saying hypothetically is that music does the same thing. Particularly in the low frequencies, it causes pressure in the blood that allows the hemoglobin molecules to uptake more oxygen. And of course, I think it's well known that oxygen in the body is what causes healing. It basically powers the healing processes of the body. So if you have more oxygen, more healing. And also we have here a leukocyte counter. So we're also beginning to do experiments with counting the white blood cells as well as the reds. In the same way that the music repairs the outer membranes of old red blood cells, the music can actually also repair the membranes of the white blood cells. Now that would be fantastic, because it would mean that music can actually help to power our immune system. When the next series of experiments, when these are behind us and we can move forward, will be in a series of in vivo experiments, which are the most important of all, because it's one thing to test for the effects of music and consciousness in a test tube, but does that relate to the human condition? Is that going to be the same for a living person? Well, we just don't know until we actually conduct those experiments. They are much more advanced experiments and will require more equipment. The in vivo experiments, so we could take a little blood sample from a volunteer who's here in the lab. We test that blood sample as a kind of baseline when they first arrive. And then we immerse them in a musical environment. And we've identified some vibroacoustic beds. There are various manufacturers that make these kind of beds where you literally lie down and the beds are supplied with sound, quite powerful woofers, low frequency woofers and other transducers that literally bathe the whole body in a full range of musical frequencies. So let's say we do that for 20 minutes, and then we take another little prick of blood from their finger, and then that little tiny drop of blood is tested. And let's see after 20 minutes how many leukocytes are viable in the bloodstream per milliliter, or microliter rather in this case. And the same would be true of the reds. Now that's one particular mechanism. But then the other, of course, relates to the period of time it takes the body to produce more white blood cells. And that's a much longer period of time. And in that case, we would probably be asking volunteers to lie on the bed for several hours. That could be, an interesting experience for these people. They can read a book, we can apply them with plenty of hydration and everything, while they're lying there. But that's another experiment to see, just what is their red blood cell count and the leukocyte count after several hours of immersion in music. And, if we find positive results, it's potentially a paradigm shifting result for medicine, actually, because here would be a way of boosting our energy. If you've got more red blood cells, more oxygen, you've obviously got more energy. And if you've got a more optimum immune system, then you're much less likely to contract any kind of disease from a pathogen or any kind of nasty substance. So basically, it could be a real game changer in medicine, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
So you see me in, I have to put the light, no?
You're getting a little dark now, yes. You're a little dark.
Got a little darker, yeah.
In this in vivo experiment, if we will add intention of many people at the same, let's say, second step or something, this might be interesting.
Yes.
To give intention to the person.
I think it would be very interesting to test the results of intention as well as the physical aspect of the music. However, even though that is important, of course, you know, it would be important. I think to a large extent, what I'm really interested in here is creating a modality which can be used in hospital environments and clinical environments, where the nurse or the doctor does not need to believe in intention, in the power of intention. You know, they don't have to be loving to their patient. They just basically switch on the equipment, just as they do now, basically with equipment in a hospital environment. You know, they try to stay dispassionate as much as possible. And you can understand that, you know, the doctor does not want to have an emotional relationship with every patient. It would not be possible. So what I'm looking for here primarily is a result without any intention. And that's the reason I'm looking for that result. And, you know, I already know that with sound therapy devices, giving you the example here of the AMI 750 made by Cyma Technologies, for example, in the USA, they make some wonderful devices, and you do not need to believe in the power of those devices for them to work. You know, if you go to someone who is skeptical, and there are a lot of skeptical people in this world, and you say, oh, I can heal you with energy, I can heal you with intention, they'll go, phew, you know, they won't believe you, basically. But if you say, I have this machine here, and all we need to do is, you know, switch it on and alter the controls, and it will heal you, then they will be automatically, you know, believers, right? It's sad. I know it's a sad fact, but it is the case. And so that's why I think to build bridges, you know, into mainstream medicine with this kind of technology, we need it to work without intention. Sound has miraculous healing properties, whether or not you believe in it. But if you believe in it, if you give yourself belief, and obviously the power of your own intention, then it works even better. And I think it was Jonathan Goldman, you know, the famous American sound healing guy, who said sound plus intention equals healing. Well, I would I mean, that's true, but I will also modify it a little to say the equation can simply be sound equals healing, right? Whether you believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, in the Bible, it's written that the world was created by sound, yeah? God said that it will be, and there was a word.
Yes, exactly. And of course, you know, the experiments that I have conducted in the lab here with the CymaScope instrument have shown that many of the early life forms in the ocean, the primordial ocean, these very early life forms can be created in the lab here, not as living entities, of course, but literally forms that resemble the early life forms. So like the trilobite, for example, or the starfish, which is one of the earliest creatures actually to be born in the oceans. You can create many of these early forms simply by dialing in frequencies, you know, on oscillators. So from that kind of evidence, it seems to suggest that sound was actually a powerful creative force in the early days of the earth, in the oceans, that triggered life. Certainly, it's true that, you know, all of the compounds that were brought into the oceans from comet impacts and so on, that there had to be an organizing force. You can't just, you know, leave it to chance how compounds come together to form life. There has to be an organizing principle. And what I'm saying is, and not just me, but many other scientists are saying that that organizing principle is sound. You know, sound is this beautiful way to organize. When you have a liquid in particular, in this case, we're talking about ocean water, it has this almost miraculous way of organizing compounds into beautiful forms. So, you know, I think it harks back certainly to the spiritual traditions that say that sound was the originator of life in the early universe.
You know, I think that sound might have a stronger effect when it's coupled with intention, but I agree with you, John. I think it's simply sound works through vibration. That is simply what it is. And I've been spending quite some time also researching the experience of people who had near-death experiences. And the vast majority of these people basically come back remembering sound, remembering the most beautiful music, that they are trying to find here, because it's not just, you know, a tuning fork, they remember music. So I totally feel and remember and know that we are coming from sound. Sound is the original vibration, so to speak. The closer you can come with the quality of your own sound fused with your consciousness. And if your consciousness is in alignment, then that sound carries that alignment, and that does it. That is the ultimate intention, already married into the sound when you are in alignment. You know what I mean? That is the most powerful vibration you could ever have. We come from that, and therefore we respond to that kind of sound, to that kind of frequency.
Very well said, Katrina, absolutely. And again, coming back to the early universe, you know, there's a mainstream model now of cosmology or in cosmology that suggests that sound was the most powerful force in the universe just following the Big Bang. So not gravity, you know, none of the other strong and weak nuclear forces, but sound was the most powerful in those apparently the first 370,000 years of the universe. And according to this model of cosmology, it's why the universe is arranged the way it is today, where you look through a powerful telescope and you see groups of galaxies here and groups of galaxies there with huge spaces in between. And if you wind time back to the Big Bang, then the reason that for these spaces between the groups of galaxies, according to this model, is sound, the huge pressures of sound that were involved at that time in the matter as the bubble was expanding, as it were. So if sound was the primordial force in the creation of the universe, and we've just talked about sound being, the creation of force in the early days of the oceans, well, it's not surprising that sound can be healing. If sound created life, obviously sound can heal life, right? I did want to mention about the work of Professor James Jimzeski and his sonocytology work. Sonocytology simply means sound of cells, that all of the cells in our bodies, all of the main cells in our bodies actually create their own sounds. Your bloodstream, your blood circulation creates sound, your breathing creates sound, your heart creates sound. All of the aspects of your body basically are creating sound. Now, when it comes to the electromagnetics of your brain, even all of those frequencies are also in the audible range. Of course, they are electromagnetic in origin, they're not actually sound, but still, they're all within the audible spectrum of sound, of frequencies. And work that Professor G and I have conducted in the lab here has shown that the sounds made by healthy cells are harmonic in relationship, whereas the sounds made by cancer cells are inharmonic or dissonant. So the frequencies that cancer cells make are all over the place. They're not related mathematically to each other. They sound pretty harsh to the ear. Whereas sounds from healthy cells are harmonious to the ear. And this is a very important aspect for the future, that it may be possible one day to eradicate cancer cells from any organism simply by dialing in the correct frequencies and reharmonizing the cell into a healthy state. That's a real possibility for the future, and a very exciting one, of course.